chapter 12, verse 1 to 4. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went as the Lord had told him. We give thanks to God for his amazing word. How's everyone doing? How is everyone doing? The answer, it seems, is not great. Earlier this week, I saw this article on the BBC website, and this is what it said. This is what the article read as. When Elmo, do you remember Elmo? We're fond of Elmo, aren't we? When Elmo the Muppet innocently asked people how they were on X, formerly known as Twitter, thousands of users replied, sharing their grief and despair. The Sesame Street character has now responded, saying he's glad he asked and posting the hashtag emotional well-being. US President, this caused quite a stir, just Elmo asking how everybody is doing caused quite a stir. US President Joe Biden agreed, posting, "Our friend Elmo is right, we have to be there for each other." And it all began with this casual question posed by the much-loved children's TV character on Monday. Elmo, this is what he wrote, "Elmo is just checking in. How's everyone doing?" he asked. Cue a collective breakdown on the internet. "Elmo, I'm suffering from existential dread over here," one user wrote. Another one wrote, "Every morning I cannot wait to go back to sleep. Every Monday I cannot wait for Friday to come. Every single day and every single week for life." Another one wrote, "The world is burning around us, Elmo." And then some celebrities joined in as well. Actress Rachel Ziegler joined in, saying she was resisting the urge to tell Elmo that I'm kind of sad. And perhaps the timing of Elmo's question was to blame. It was never going to end well to ask such a question on a Monday morning in January at the end of a month that many people feel has gone on forever. But the red furry haired Muppet was not fazed by everyone dumping their troubles on him. Taking to Twitter in response on Tuesday, he wrote, "Wow, Elmo is glad he asked. Elmo learned that it is important to ask a friend how they're doing. Elmo will check in again soon. Friends, Elmo loves you. Emotional well-being." And then the Cookie Monster joined in. He's not so good at English, but he said, "Me here to talk it out whenever you want. Me will also supply the cookies." And then Ernie's best friend Bert added, "I'm here if ever you need a shoulder to lean on. I'll make us both a warm cup of tea." And Elmo's efforts to support people's emotional well-being were praised by President Biden himself. This is what the president said to Elmo. "I know how hard it is some days to sweep the clouds away and get sunnier days. We have to be there for each other, offer our help to a neighbor in need, and above all else, ask for help when we need it. Even though it's hard, you're never alone." It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. You know, I want to say today, when I read that, I was just reminded that we live in a hurting world. In fact, actually, this passage, what we're thinking about today is that we are actually called to reach out to a hurting world, to ask people, how is everybody doing? We're called to reach out. The mission of Jesus, it's not really our focus today, but the mission of Jesus is really clear. Jesus took hold of the manifest, he said, of Isaiah. "He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, the recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And this is the vision of God. This is the mission or the commission. His vision is to send his people out into a broken, hurting world to be good news, to love our neighbours. That's why I love the story of what Helen shared earlier. God says go. And that's exactly what God says to Abraham in our passage today. God said to Abraham and Sarah, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. Now, the context here is really important, because the reality is that the world in which Abraham lived was just as broken as ours. If Elmo had asked back then, if Twitter had existed in Genesis chapter 12, I'm sure the response would have been pretty similar. If you look at the first, actually, this passage here in Genesis 12 is what they call a fulcrum passage. You see, the first 11 chapters of Genesis, apart from the creation in Eden, from the fall, we see that there is violence. We see there is rebellion against God and against each other. We see that there is a corrupt humanity. There is so much brokenness. Actually, within those first 11 chapters, we see the sorrow and the pain of God, almost regretting that he had made mankind at all. His heart was filled with sorrow. What does he do when he sees a Sodom and Gomorrah? What does he do when he sees the inclination of human heart was always towards evil? And so he responds with a flood. What does he do when he sees the Tower of Babel, that people are trying to build their lives and their world without God? That there was an absolute rejection of God. And so what we see is chaos. What we see is hurting and broken lives experiencing justice, and a world that was just living as if God didn't exist. There are similarities. There are similarities in what's going on at the end of chapter 11 of Genesis and to what is going on in our world today. And it had been so painful and sorrowful for God to see the direction of travel. What was the response? What is the response of God after the flood, after Babel? What should he do? Should God turn his back on humanity? Should he wipe them off the face of the earth? No. What we see in the heart of God is that actually he calls an elderly couple. I want to say age is no barrier to the amazing purposes and plans of God. It's a bit cheesy, but there's a phrase, there's no retirement in God's service. Actually, it's only retirement. You get a new set of wheels. It's a bit cheesy, but it's true. God gives you a brand new set of wheels, maybe a Ferrari in your old age. But God says go. If you are alive, you're alive for God's purpose, whatever shape that might look like. And so God's amazing response to a messed up, hurting, broken world, God's response is not to turn his back, but to choose an elderly couple, to choose a family. He chose a small family to bless all the families of the world. That's incredible. God takes a small family to bless all the families. It wasn't meant to be insular. The calling and the establishing of Israel over the next chapters, that story of a family was never meant to be just for that family. The story of that family was to take a family in this circumstance, put a call of God on their life and to be a blessing to others. That is the action of God. And I think that when I looked at this passage again, it's a familiar passage. It wasn't so long ago that I preached on this passage here in this place. And so what I saw this time as we're at the start of 1, 2, 3, go is that somehow in the action of God, he wants to take a family to bless other families. And we're a church family. And somewhere it just occurred to me that maybe this is the plan of God, that he wants to take this family, this family, and send us out to be a blessing to other families. So that's the plan of God, and the plan of God hasn't changed. These verses are a pivotal moment. What is God's strategy to reach out to a broken, hurted world? As I said, he takes a small family to bless other families. Verse 3, all people on earth will be blessed through you. God's call on us as a church family is to bless all those people around us. He calls us to go and be a blessing. Just in these moments then, at the start of this series, I want to ask the question, what do we learn about this call to go? If God is calling us as a family to be a blessing to all those around us, what do we learn about this call from the original call on Abraham and Sarah? Just two very simple, I say they're simple things. They're simple ideas, but they're not easy to walk out, as we see with Abraham and Sarah. The first thing that we learn about this call to go is that sometimes we have to, if we're going to go, sometimes we have to be willing to let go of other things. Sometimes we have to let things go in order to go. Let me say that again. Sometimes we have to let things go in order to go. What do I mean? Well, if you look at verse 1, the Lord said to Abraham, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. That's a lot to leave behind, isn't it? That's a lot of things that would have been precious to Abraham. Your country, like your roots, your people, the community or the village that you've grown up in, your aunties, your uncles, your cousins, your second cousins, everybody, like your village, and your father's household, those who know and love you the best, those who know you at your worst, know your greatest potential, just the little unit that God has placed you in. And God says, look, I want you to leave everything that's familiar to you. I want you to leave everything that is close to you. I want you to leave even those who are nearest and dearest. These are all things that would have represented both familiarity and security. This was Abraham's comfort zone, so to speak. And it's not easy, is it, to step out of our comfort zones? If this can be translated to us as a church, God calling a family to be a blessing to all other families, and if part of the going is to let go of things that are familiar and secure to us in order to go, maybe that's a challenge to us. Maybe God would say, look, there are things in our past that are very dear to us, but in order to go, sometimes we have to let things go, to go into a new adventure. See, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. It's not always easy. Sometimes we have to let go of things in order to go. Now, it would have been easy for Abraham to say, well, no, this is where my life is. And what exactly did Abraham have to go on? How much revelation did he have? We have so much more revelation. We have the resurrection. We have the promises. We have the Holy Spirit. What did Abraham actually know of God when God said, go? He really, really had to trust. He really had to trust. But part of the going is to step out of our comfort zone. Sometimes it can be scary to reach out. But I was inspired by what Helen shared earlier, just a simple little act is an absolute blessing. So the first thing I just want us to recognize that if we're serious about stepping into God's call for us as a church, as a small family, to be a blessing to all families, there might be times that God says to us as a church, I want you to step out of your comfort zone. I want you to leave behind those things that are familiar and secure in order to take hold of the adventure of God. The first thing to say is sometimes we have to let go of things in order to go, which actually then moves us on to the second principle here, which is not only did they have to let go in order to go, they had to hold on to the promises rather than the problems. They had to hold on to the promises rather than the problems. It says here, I will make you into a great nation and I will bless you. Actually, there's so many promises here. I will make you into a great nation. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing, and all peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. It seems to me that the challenge for Abraham and Sarah was whether they were going to hold on to the promises of God or whether they were going to look at the problems. Now, remember, I said that this is an elderly couple. This is an elderly couple who had not been able to conceive. And so when God is saying to this couple that you will be a blessing, that I will make you into a great nation, I will make your name great, we could understand, couldn't we? We can totally understand that they would have been full of doubt. This is impossible, God. You're making this up. What on earth are you talking about? In fact, actually, when Sarah heard the vision of God, she laughed. She thought it was hilarious. I mean, there's no way that this is going to be possible. Do you know, the challenge is for this couple, or are they going to hear the promises of God and trust him, or are they going to look at the problems and doubt him? Are we going to hold on to the promises or the problems? Do you know, there's two things to say here about this part of the story. I want to say God's vision is always impossible. God's vision is always bigger than ourselves. If God's vision was smaller than us, we would be able to do it in our own strength, wouldn't we? And then where would the glory go? The glory would go to us, and we would fall into that temptation to say, aren't we great? Look what we've done. That was the problem with the Tower of Babel. They were trying to build God's world in their own strength without God, to bring glory to themselves. This one is a vision which is impossible. It's beyond them. There's nothing they can do in their own strength. And so when God fulfills this vision, where does the glory go to? Everybody knows that the vision is a miracle. Everybody knows that the blessing here is God's amazing action. Is it possible that God is calling us to a vision that's way beyond ourselves? A small family to bless the families of the world. I mean, how big should the vision be? I mean, why not God give us a world vision? Why not? In fact, actually, it's more likely that if the vision is bigger and beyond us, it's more likely that it's of God than if it's a smaller vision. And so actually, the change of name for Abraham was really interesting. God, to just kind of reinforce the promise, changed his name to Abraham, which means father of many, father of the nations. And to Sarah, you will be a mother of nations. And so part of the challenging going is, yeah, you've got to be willing to let go of those security things around us and go with God. Let God be your security rather than the things around us. Yes, it's about letting go, but it's also about taking hold. If God says you can do something, he really means it. If God says, I want you to go, I want you to step into this circumstance, I want you to reach out to this family or to this people group, and it might seem impossible for the good news to be spread in Westmoreland. It might seem impossible that Westmoreland could come to know Jesus, even before we get to Ditton, Leybourne, Chase, Aylesford, Kings Hill. Do you know what I mean? Seeing the gospel cut, I'd be happy if it just came in the 5 houses next door to me. But God's vision is always bigger. Are we going to hold on to the promises rather than the problems? So there we have it. I think this is all we need to say as an introduction. Can we just go to that last slide, please, Ali? Just to remind ourselves as we step into this Lent series, God calls us to go, to step out as a church family. I think if we look at the message of this story, God chooses a small and rather elderly family in order to be a blessing to everyone around. We might feel sometimes that we're small, and some of us might feel elderly. But I think God can use us in amazing, amazing ways. So if we're willing to go, what are the challenges? Sometimes as a church, we have to let go of things in order to go. Sometimes we have to let go of that which is secure, that which is familiar, to step into the new adventure. And secondly, actually, God's vision is impossible, but what are we going to trust? Are we going to trust the promises, or are we going to look at the problems? I really think that if God says we can do it, we can do it. And so, let us step, I'll just put this challenge right at the end. Let us step out as a church family to bless many families. Let's pray together. Let's pray.